Welcome to Undrafted Hockey Fan. Today we are going over the Red Wings, and we are going to be going over what they look like post trade deadline. So if you're looking at the Red Wings here, it's very exciting. If you're on YouTube, you can see the visual. We're using Puckpedia. We're using GM mode. If you're listening on audio, make sure to like and 5 stars. It really helps out small creators like me. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or anything like that, so let me know. I really appreciate it. So let's jump right into it. So we have right now. So you can, if you're on YouTube, I'm going to talk about these. I'm going to say these out loud just so people can see them. Right now, Marco Kasper is currently being sent down to the AHL. That is not because he's looking to play games down there or anything. He's absolutely earned a spot. But Marco Kasper is currently, he's currently down the AHL. So I'm first off, I'm going to move him up right now. So I'm going to say, okay, go to him. We'll call him up right now and put him in the lineup and really switch spots with Joe Veleno for sure. So going over the lines. So the reason I want to do post-trade deadline is because there's things that I think that the Red Wings should do. And I think that they absolutely should take advantage of this and move some guys who are in talks. And it's also some things that I think they should do, not to a full swing. I don't want to be sending out a huge, a first round pick or anything for these types of picks, but there's definitely some guys that are going to cost some money to actually make some changes. So when I'm looking at these, I want to try and say, okay, what are we going to do with some of these lines, right? So I'm going to say what the lines are going to look like after the trade deadline. So I think your first line for Marco Kasper is absolutely going to be, or first line is going to be Marco Kasper on the left, Dylan Larkin center, Lucas Raymond on the right. It's been working so well with those guys. Lucas Raymond's over a point per game. Marco Kasper's really popping off since Todd McClellan came in, and he's a first line winger. That's phenomenal. I think he ends up being a center, third line center, but he's really working out as a first line winger, so let's keep him there for right now. And we have Alex DeBrincat on the second line on the left wing, Andrew Kopp centering it on the second line, and Vladimir Tarasenko according to Puckpedia. I think Kane he's now back from injury. I think he gets that spot back again. So we're seeing Tarasenko drop down as well. So now we're looking at a line of Jonathan Berggren, Michael Rasmussen, and Vladimir Tarasenko. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand why it's a decent line, right? But there are some rumors talking about Vladimir Tarasenko, who we'll talk about trading at this trade deadline, just so you know, with some stipulations. Then you have Tyler Mott, JT Comfort, Christian Fisher with Joe Veleno as your extra. And then I'm thinking I'm going to put Veleno in there for Tyler Mott. And then JT Comfort is going to middle line center. Michael Rasmussen has been looking really good as a third line center. I think him and it was Fisher. I think it was Fisher. Either way, you're seeing that Vladimir Tarasenko, who's not been working out. He's naturally played on his right side. They put him on the right side as well. It's just not working out. And again, there's some rumors that Tarasenko could potentially be moved. It could be a mutual move. The stipulation is that he is a full-blown no trade clause. So actually, let's go into that first part. Let's actually just talk about trading Tarasenko. So so we look at Tarasenko, what he's done so far this year. So if you pull up his page, he currently has, in 53 games with the Red Wings, he has 22 points, 7 goals, 15 assists. That's just not the type of Tarasenko that we thought we signed. So especially for $4.75 million, you're getting maybe 40 points out of them. That you're paying him way too much for a guy like that, right? Especially when we saw with Florida last year, again on the third line, he had 14 points in 19 games. Even with Ottawa at this point, in 57 games, he had 41 points. He had almost double the amount of points at this point in the season. So I'm concerned that he's not being utilized properly. He's playing on the second power play. So I don't know what you need to do to kind of squeeze him. And this is a guy that has formerly scored 40 goals in a season with the St. Louis Blues. It's been a while, but he was consistently putting about 30 goals a season with the St. Louis Blues. When he was playing full seasons, right, with minor injuries, max, or with at least 75 games played, he had 34 goals. He had 33 goals, and 39 goals. And then he had a 40 goal season, a 37 goal season. So this is going back all the way to 2014, 2015. Now, mind you, Red Wings signed Tarasenko on the second day of free agency. They signed him I believe it was July 3rd. So it was a time where, Red Wings and Tarasenko were kind of a little lost, right? A lot of the big major free agents that were looking to get signed were already taken and everything. Tarasenko was kind of sitting there without a contract. And, Red Wings are looking for a scorer. So it seemed like, okay, well, this is a win-win. We can get this. He's older, right? He's an older birthday. But he's a 32-year-old at the time. and you sign him, like, hey, maybe this will work out really well. Mind you, they give him $4.75 million, and it's free agency, right? So you pay a little extra, and you give him this is the rule. This is what I was told in general when it comes to free agency, right? You typically, whatever the contract is, besides like league minimum and stuff like that, maybe like $1 million or less. When it comes to contracts, they typically pay $1 million more per year for one extra year. If the Red Wings had gotten Tarasenko, so right now they signed him for $4.75 million per year for 2 years. If you got Tarasenko at one less year and at 3.75, you're looking at this doesn't look as bad, right? The 22 points, it's still not great. You're like, this isn't as bad. The contract doesn't look as bad, right? If we look at what they have with Justin Holl, they signed Justin Holl to a 3-year deal at 3-year deal, right? 3-year deal at $3.4 million. If you're telling me that was a 2-year deal at $2.4 million, Justin Holl doesn't look that bad, right? He's still a 6'7" defenseman, but for a right-handed shooting defenseman, it's not as bad, right? JT Compher, same thing, 5-year deal at $5.1 million. If it was 4-year deal at 4.1, you're getting the gist of it, right? Andrew Kopp, same thing, 4-year. He has a 5-year deal at 5.6. If it was 4 years at 4.6, again, looks way different, right? So that's the idea around free agency, and that's why you can't build your teams around just free agents. You have to be able to, actually develop talent, and which Red Wings have been doing a great job. Like, mind you, look at all the guys that are coming up in their system that Yzerman has drafted. We're starting to see the Yzer plan actually work out because the guys are, he's drafted guys. They're shedding old bad contracts. And they have this rolling cap that they're working with, right? And they signed Lucas Raymond to a great deal. Again, first round pick popping off. Casper starting to pop off as well. Joe Veleno and Dante Bergeron were part of the Holland era, so they don't count part of Yzerman's plan, right? But you're looking at Moritz Seider's really popping off. Simon Edmondson's popping up, first round pick. Albert Johansson has gotten significantly better under Todd McClellan. He is a second round draft pick, right? And of course, looking down in the AHL, we have a Soderblom's looking good. He's actually been up. I am missing him. Soderblom also got sent down. We got to move him up as well because he is in the lineup as well. I think Bergeron goes bottom line. Here we go. Okay, so let me see. I'm trying to reorganize this again. So the third line actually is Elmer Soderblom, Rasmussen, Tarasenko. Does that sound about right? I know they had Raz and Soderblom playing with each other for a bit. Yeah, that makes sense because Soderblom's more of he can be a good pass guy and everything. So third line looks more like Elmer Soderblom, Rasmussen, Tarasenko, and then you have Veleno, JT Compher, Bergeron on the bottom. So, anyways, so with that, we want to get rid of Tarasenko. So again, these contracts are harder to get rid of because Tarasenko is harder to get rid of because he has a full-blown no trade clause in the first year of his deal. And so he gets to decide if he wants to get traded or not. So, and this is where I think this is going to be a mutually beneficial situation for Tarasenko. He wants to be on a Stanley Cup contender, right? I think he already got a Stanley Cup with St. Louis and with Florida last year. And so I think it's probably not the best time to trade him unless you could trade him for a good deal. I don't think you're going to be able to get a good deal for someone to take on that contract because he has a full-blown no trade clause. So I think there's a couple options of who you could trade him to. And looking at some of the options where I think it might be most beneficial is I was looking at the Washington Capitals as being one of those teams. So if we pull up the Washington Capitals, they're a team that is killing it this year. Pull up the ESPN wildcard standings. They're first in the league. I don't know if you know this. So using the ESPN, they're 80 points, first team to 80 points. And they have in 55 games, they're leading the Eastern Conference. Oh no, Winnipeg Jets have 81, so they're second. Well, Washington Capitals are second. I apologize. So one of the things that I think, currently the Washington Capitals are a little bit of a mortal enemy of the Red Wings because of that last year. They tied going up to the end of the season. He was 91 points. And Washington ended up making the playoffs because they had more regulation wins. So they currently have $3.6 million in cap space, the Washington Capitals. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a win-win here. So the reason I picked, so there's a couple teams that I was looking to pick. So one of them was the Minnesota Wild, who have some Russian players, right? I'm looking at teams. One of the reasons I think that Vladimir Tarasenko is not fitting in is there are no other Russian players here. One of the reasons that the Swedes thrive on the Red Wings is because there's a bunch of Swedish players. There is something to the Europeans and guys from other countries being able to talk in their native tongue. I mean, when you look at the Red Wings, when you go to Swedish players, or people that can speak Swedish, right? Raymond Kasper is from Austria, knows Swedish because he played in the SHL, right? You have Soderblom, you have Jonathan Berggren, Simon Edvinsson, Albert Johansson, Erik Gustafsson is from Sweden as well, right? Yes, he's very sure he's from Sweden. Yes, he's from Sweden as well. So there is a ton of guys that are coming from Sweden, right? So everyone else is like, so you have one German, that's Moritz Seider, right? A lot of Americans and Canadians, right? They're all speaking English. And then you have Vladimir Tarasenko, who again, Casper speaks English and Swedish. So, and then Tarasenko is the only Russian. So I think there's an absolute culture issue with Vladimir Tarasenko being on the team. So I'm looking at teams that have some Russians, right? We saw Philadelphia. They have Kuzmenko, they have Michkov. We have a Stanley Cup contender in the Minnesota Wild, who are in the third spot in the Western Conference and the third spot in the Central with 70 points. They have Kaprizov. They have a couple of Russians as well. And I'm looking at some of the other teams. There's Vancouver had some Russians. They moved off of them as well. Like the only way Tarasenko is going to be willing to move off of his contract is if there's other guys that he can play with that are also Russian, in my opinion. Because again, in my opinion, it's a culture thing. Tampa Bay Lightning is an option here as well. I don't know if they need him as much when it comes to a team that I just don't think they need him. And another reason I picked Washington is because they have someone that they can offload their contracts, right? Actually, I'm going to go with Tampa Bay real quick, looking at their Russians. You have, of course, Kucherov. I guess there's not many as I thought. There's not a ton. I mean, you have Vasilevsky, of course, as well. But again, I think your Russian factor when it comes to Washington is going to be way better. And especially because they're a team that's super hot. It's someone that I think that, I mean, we saw Tarasenko. He chose to waive his full-blown no move clause last year for Florida because they were an absolute contender. I think you have with Ovechkin there and Protas, Alexei Protas. You have Jacob Verana. Jakub Verana. He's Czech, so he won't do. I think it's just Ovechkin. I mean, Tarasenko would love to play Ovechkin too. I think that's just be a good dynamic shooter. I just see Washington being one of those teams that needs to move off of a contract. And so the only con right here is that Tarasenko has this year and next year. So there's a part where I think that the Red Wings are going to end up having to retain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say we are going to trade him. We're absolutely going to trade Tarasenko. Go to trade. So going to a trade. And we go to trading partner. And we're going to the Washington Capitals. And here we go. Okay. So Washington Capitals. And I'm looking at some of the guys and what they've been doing this year. So if we go to their stats, I'm going to pull up, I'll share this tab too. We have the Washington Capitals going to their depth chart and seeing who has been maybe not performing. There's maybe some contracts they want to offload. And so, of course, you're not going to move off of a Ovechkin, Strome, or Wilson. Of course not, right? Alexei Protas is looking phenomenal. Pierre Dubois can't do. He's got his no movement clause. Connor McMichael. You're kind of none of these guys are working out. Or all of those guys are working out. So we go to the bottom 6, right? Because you're doing a guy who is struggling a little bit, and maybe just not that he's not that productive right now. And potentially is going to be a huge cap hit, right? We're looking at Taylor Radish, $1 million, not that great. Lars Eller, they traded for him. They wanted him clearly. So it's not a huge cap hit, but $2.45 million. Ethan Frank, nope. Brandon Duhaime, no. Nick Dowd, no. Again, Andrew Mangiapane has 19 points in 54 games, a similar production to our own Vladimir Tarasenko at 22 points in 53 games. So in my opinion, what we're going to do is we're going to trade for, let me share this tab. We're going to be trading for Mangiapane. So Andrew Mangiapane, he's an expiring contract, but his cap hit is $5.1 million. That is more money than Tarasenko. So this is, again, assuming that Tarasenko waives his full-blown no trade clause. So, but mind you, Red Wings are taking on a guy who is also, he's not as productive, but potentially also needs a change of scenery, right? He does have a modified no trade clause. So we're looking at he has pulling it up, modified no trade clause, 18 no trade list. So that's basically Canada and another team. So, it's basically Canada. So, and he's a UFA at the end of this too, right? And mind you, they traded for him as well. They traded a second-round pick for Andrew Mangiapane. In my opinion, if Tarasenko is willing to waive to go to Washington, Red Wings are willing to take on Andrew Mangiapane's contract. So, and mind you, there's another year. So if the Red Wings decide to retain on this too, which I think they can, I think that there's an absolute opportunity where they can retain. How do we do this? Where is the retain? Oh, money here. Money. I think because of how much cap they have available, I think if they retain half, so 23.75, I think that they can retain half. And the reason is I think they don't want to give up the amount of it's going to cost to trade. So this past summer, Red Wings traded Jake Wellman and his 2-year, $3.4 million per year contract to the San Jose Sharks with a second-round pick to offload the contract. So that's a $6.8 million to offload Jake Wellman to the San Jose Sharks for a second-round pick. You're offloading, you're taking on some money for the Andrew Mangiapane, and you're retaining. Maybe not that much. Maybe we don't retain that much. Let's retain. What's 25% of 4.75? Let's do 25% of 4.75. 475,000 times 0.25. We're going to retain 11875,000. Okay, so basically almost $1.2 million retained. That means next year that Vladimir Tarasenko's contract is only going to be worth $3.5 million instead. Actually, I think Red Wings. I think the cap space is less important. I think we're going to retain the whole thing. Can they afford that? Let's look at. I'm going to do this on the fly too. So the projected cap space is 1.4. I think we're going to do the whole thing. Yeah, we're going to retain 50%. I think it's just. I don't think they want to. I think Eisman's too good at drafting, and this is why I'd rather him take on as much of the contract as possible. This does give projected cap space of the Red Wings at $1 million left, right? And then current cap space for the Washington Capitals is $7 million too. Again, I think the Red Wings, because they're offloading an extra year, they will have to end up doing a pick. I don't think it'd be cost that much, but they are taking out a player that has a 16-team no trade list. So I think you could do this. It's $2.75 million. It's $2.75 million, right, for next year. So, which if Jake Wellman costs a third or a second round pick for that, I think you could do it because you're also taking Kim Cassidy's back this year. I think you could do it for a 4th round pick. So I'm going to do a Vladimir Tarasenko and a 4th round pick for Andrew Mangiapane. And again, that gives Red Wings a guy. I mean, you might as well trade for a guy with similar production, right? And then that way you save for next year's contract as well with Vladimir Tarasenko. That makes a ton of sense. I think this is absolutely a win in that case. So you move off of Andrew Mangiapane. So going to our depth chart now, or you move off of not Andrew Mangiapane, you move off of Tarasenko. Now you have Mangiapane for this year. He's going to play third line, right? And mind you, Mangiapane is like 5'10". He's left shot. He can play center, but I mean, we'll probably put him on the wing. Let him try and produce. Again, it's a guy you take on. And then if you try him out, if you like him, you can re-sign him. If not, you let him go to free agency. It's not a big deal. And you're basically just offloading for next year's contract. Again, this doesn't affect further years with Mangiapane, but this is an option here. So, and then we're going to go back. We're going to take a quick break, but we're going to talk about trading a couple other guys that I have set up here. We're going to talk about trading an Erik Gustafsson and the crazy one of the bad signings, Justin Holl. So stay tuned. Let me jump to a quick break for DraftKings, and then we will see you in just a few minutes. And boom. Playoffs? We're talking about playoffs? You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning the playoffs, and you can score big by betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Now, again, if you're looking at a contender like maybe the Chiefs or the Bills, I mean, you could bet them to go all the way. Or if you're just a Chiefs hater, let's say, you can bet against them up until the Super Bowl, and it's so great. So make sure to get on the action at DraftKings. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boo Hill Casino Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. All right, we are back. And so we're talking about trading Erik Gustafsson and Justin Holl. This is currently your bottom pair. Guys, right now, you currently have Jeff Petrie on IR. But again, we can't do anything about him, and William Lagesson's there as well. But again, he's a AHL guy anyway. So let's talk about trading. First off, let's talk about offloading Justin Holl. So there's one guy has some. I mean, one of the problems with Justin Holl is that he is not producing. He is being paid way too much, and they have him for this year and next year. Again, it's another offload of the contract. It's a guy you signed for an extra year. He signed on July 1st in 2023. Right when he's like, hey, we need a right-handed defenseman. Understandably, that's why they traded for Jeff Petrie as well. They have guys in the system ready to come up. Tuomisto may be one of those guys next year. Maybe Axel Sani-Pellikka as well. But they need a solidified right guy who's not. And this again, Justin Holl is just not working. He has 5 points in 47 games. So going with this, you have. So I want to offload him as contract. So he does have a modified no trade clause. It is a 10-team no trade list. So that means it's usually the 7 Canadian markets and the 3 California markets for tax reasons. So he can't get traded to those. So you're taking out those. You're taking out Anaheim, who's not taking on bad contracts like Trouba. Chicago, maybe, but Chicago probably doesn't want to take him on either for the price. So one of the teams that I thought in my opinion, may need him is going to be a team in Seattle. So one of the reasons I picked Seattle is there was a little bit more. So they have the cap space, $4.5 million. And also their right side, they don't have a right-handed defenseman. So they're missing a right shot third pair defenseman. Currently on their third pair, they're playing Josh Mahura and Evans Riker. So they have Josh Mahura for one more year on the left side, but if you can move Evans Riker or Riker Evans to the left side and then put Justin Holl as your right D, that is an option as well. Also, there's a couple of guys that I wanted to take off their hands as well. Where is he? I just saw him. I'm looking for Hayden Fleury. Where you at, bro? I know you're here. I was just doing the trade earlier. Cale Fleury. Sorry, Cale Fleury. I think he was a scratch. Where you at, man? Maybe he got sent down. Where you at? I know you're here. Cale Fleury. Okay, never mind. 1 second. Okay, so I found Cale Fleury. He got sent down to the AHL on a loan, so I imagine just going to continue to get more playing time. But this is a guy that was underutilized. So if we look at a trade for him, there's a couple trades that I have in mind. So I'm thinking you can either do Justin Holl to Seattle because they don't have a third line or third pair right D. But I think Red Wings will want to get a right D back. And I think Cale Fleury, because he's 26 years old. He's only played 7 games this year. I don't know if he's the best option. That was what I was thinking at first. So I actually looked a little bit more into this. And I think there's an option here where the Red Wings could get a guy, and there's two options. One is Connor Murphy, who's going to be the more expensive one. He has this year and next year. He's 31 years old, 6'4", and he's assistant captain on the Chicago Blackhawks. So again, a team that the Red Wings could absolutely ship Justin Holl to. I don't know if they're looking to take on bad contracts though right now, because they're just, it's not one of the like, they're not looking to take on bad contracts because they're trying to get better, which is why they bought this year. So, and I think Connor Murphy's going to end up costing too much for the Red Wings to be able to do. I think it'd be a great little pickup. And you get him for, again, this year and next year. So I think, and the Red Wings, I think, are going to be, I don't think they're going to go big game hunting in this one. So I think Connor Murphy may be out of the question in this case. But there's a guy who was on a waiver claim earlier this year, a former first round draft pick who was picked up by the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was making $2.5 million a year. And that is a 17th overall Dante Fabbro, 26 years old, 6 foot, 190 pounds. So I think that would be a trade that's worth looking into. So if we're going Columbus Blue Jackets over here, pulling him up. All right, we got where are you at? Dante Fabbro. He's making $2.5 million for just this year. Red Wings are going to be trading Justin Holl. He's got this year and next year. Again, this is where I think, do Red Wings want to retain on this? And I don't know if they do for the $3.4 million. Again, this is, you're already retaining on Tarasenko for next year. So you have to consider, are you willing to give the pick that's necessary for that, right? So you're giving an extra $900,000 this year, equivalent of cap space, right? Which the Columbus Blue Jackets would take in spades, right? I think they'd rather have the higher pick. So you're dumping off at $3.4 million next year and a little bit this year. So if we look at $3.4 million for Jake Wellman as an example, that was a second round pick, right? And we see guys getting retained for about $1 million for like a 4th or a 5th round pick at the trade deadline. Mind you, that's also the end of the year. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here, is that for the rest of the year, you're taking on the $900,000. That's like a 4th or 5th round pick for Justin Holl. So let's just say it's a 5th round pick this year, right? 2025. And I think to take on the next year, I think you're going to do a 3rd round pick. And I think you're going to do the New York Rangers. So you have the 5th round pick for taking on the extra money this year, because again, they're taking on the $900,000 between Dante Fabbro and Justin Holl. And then for next year, you're going to give him a 3rd round pick to take on the $3.4 million for the next year. So to me, that makes a ton of sense. I think maybe they could throw in, like Columbus could throw in another like couple picks, like maybe like a 7th or something like that, or a 6th. But overall, I think it's not going to make a huge difference. But I think this is a good trade. And again, now in this case, Red Wings don't have to take on a contract. They actually don't have to retain any money at all, right? So I'm going to submit this one as well. Which I think that's a solid trade right there. So now you moved off of Justin Holl. And it didn't cost you a ton. Again, the 3rd round pick is something, right? And then we have Dante Fabbro on the right side. Now you have a right side defender, and you can move. Now if Petrie comes back as well, like you have an option on Dante Fabbro, and again, you can see if you like him. Maybe you want to extend him at the end of this year. Again, it's an option. He's 26 years old, right? He's a former 1st round pick. Like, he didn't really work out in Nashville, and he's working out. He looked really good in Columbus. So in his first 6 games this year with the Nashville Predators, he had 0 points. With the Columbus Blue Jackets, he has 13 points. He's put up a point every 3 games. That's not too bad for a right-handed shot defenseman. Again, 26 years old. Try him out. Maybe he works out. Maybe he doesn't. But again, it's worth a shot in this case. So then now we are moving on to the last contract. We are moving off of Erik Gustafsson. And there was talks about him also being traded as well. Him and then Tarasenko were 2 ones that we're really looking at, right? Now, I think just a real quick clip. I want to clip the goalies real quick too. I think with the goalies, Red Wings are going to keep all their goalies unless they want to trade like Husso or Campbell. I don't think anyone's going to take on those. If they want to, they can have them. I mean, those guys are waived, so no one wanted them for free. So if the Red Wings they don't need to offer the cap space because Campbell and Husso will be gone next year. So it's not a big deal there. So you're not worried about cap space in this change. So Alex Lyon is honestly, with the Red Wings in the position of being in a wild card spot currently. They're currently in the 2nd wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. I don't think it makes sense for them to do that. So keep Alex Lyon. I might re-sign him for a year or two, but I think he's going to be too expensive next year. I think he's going to want like a $3 or $4 million deal for 3 or 4 years. So we will see what he does. I think there was a steal getting him at $900,000. So, but let's talk about an Erik Gustafsson trade. So going over to the page here, again, these are my ideals as well of what I would like to see. So if we did a trade for Erik Gustafsson, to me, this is where the Red Wings are starting to look to add in this case. So Erik Gustafsson makes $2 million this year and next year, mind you. So these are all places that you're trying to give them either teams that are rebuilding or that see the value in the guy next year. Again, with Washington, you're hoping they see the value for next year, but it might not work out. So they're also looking for a guy to get back. And so one of the guys they're looking back was on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Again, a team that's also rebuilding, trying to get better, but a guy who and I consider trading Justin Holl to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I really did. It didn't make sense because the value we're going to get back. But to me, I think Erik Gustafsson is a guy that you absolutely, Kyle Dubas would absolutely take on. So going with Erik Gustafsson, he makes $2 million this year and next year, right? Again, free agency. If you had got him for, 1 year at $1.5 million, great. Or 1 year at $1 million would be phenomenal. But again, you're getting that extra year and the extra money for a guy. So one of the guys I'm looking for is Matt Grzelcyk. So if we go to a Matt Grzelcyk here, and what he's done this year, and to me, this is one of the upgrades, right? And you're going to have to pay a little bit more for him because you're taking on a guy who's doing a little bit better. He's a left-hand shot defenseman. He's 31. He's playing second pair D on the for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he has 28 points in 57 games. So he's just under a half point per game player. So it is going to cost you a little bit more, and you have to consider what you're willing to trade for a guy like him. And to me, I think it's going to cost you. Again, it's a UFA, right? So they want to get value for him. So Eric, let's see, going to where are you at? Where is he? Matt Grzelcyk. Pulling this up. Goodness gracious. Matt Grzelcyk. There you are. 1 year, $2.75 million. Now, if you're looking at the cap space, right? Red Wings absolutely have cap space available too. So I was like, okay, let's do this. I think the extra year is going to cost a lot. To me, there's a guy that the Red Wings are not going to requalify. And to me, he's been injury prone. I think he needs a chance in another organization, and that is Cross Hanas. So if you look at what Cross Hanas is, he's down in the AHL right now. And again, this is a guy, it's a prospect. He's 23 years old, former second round pick in 2020 with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Again, so I think he needs another opportunity. He has 12 points in 43 games. And last year he had 16 points in 58 games. His first year in Grand Rapids, 17 points in 30 games. So looked like he was trending as a half point per game player, and he just is not hitting that right now. Right now he's just slightly above a point every 4 games. And we saw him with the Portland Winterhawks in the WHL in 21-22, 86 points in 63 games. To me, I think he's a good player. I think he just needs a different opportunity, but I think that's why he brings some value. And you've seen him perform in juniors. I think with Cross Hanas, you're also going to need to give a pick as well. So in my opinion, I think you're going to end up giving. I think it's a little expensive. It's $2 million a year, right? So you're taking out a little bit of Matt Grzelcyk money now, but again, you're having to pay for that second year. I think you end up giving a fourth round pick with this. So we're going to give the 2027 fourth round pick. I think because Cross Hanas brings some value, let's upgrade it to a third. We're going to upgrade that to is a third too much? Maybe a fifth and a sixth. I mean, you do that. I think I'm going to go a fourth round pick. I think it's a little extra. I think Cross Hanas is a good prospect. And again, I think he's a guy you're not going to resign, in my opinion. I think he's just not worth. I don't think he's going to resign him. He's not produced what you need him to. Former second round pick, and again, you're moving up Erik Gustafsson, so and a fourth round pick. I'd even willing to give a third, and then that way you could see if you like Matt Grzelcyk as well. I think that's a good one. Oh, not publish. I want to submit trade. So if we're looking at our depth chart now, wow, I just used up like all their fourth round draft picks. Wait, a fourth went with Washington, a fourth went with Pittsburgh, fifth went with Columbus, and a third one probably it might be a it's a Rangers. That's fine. So now we're going to Matt Grzelcyk on the left, Dante Fabbro on the right, and I think what you can end up doing is now you have a left side defenseman, veteran. See if you want to keep him around, and then you have Dante Fabbro. I think again another guy if you want to see if you want to keep him around as well. Reasonable cap hits. I think these are minor moves. I don't think the Red Wings are going to make big moves or big swings because why would you? It's good to make a little change to try and get little upgrades here, but overall, like you want guys who have like been there, done that a little bit, right? Dante Fabbro was on a phenomenal national team last year. Matt Grzelcyk has been playing with Sidney Crosby and Letang and Evgeny Malkin, so he knows those type of culture things. So you're getting one good veteran, another guy who's really popped off this year as well, kind of similar to the Red Wings as well. And again, you can move Dante Fabbro in there as well with Jeff Petrie, right? Maybe you move Albert Johansson back to the left side. Like there's some movement here, right? You can do some good things. I would like to see another right-handed defenseman, but I think that's going to be more of an offseason move. And then if we're talking offseason, we're probably going to buy in either Andrew Kopp or JT Miller. Those are also options, but that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the trade deadline. So make sure you hit like and subscribe and let me know what your thoughts are. Because I said this is a fun exercise. I love doing these, and Red Wings are my favorite. So absolutely want to know what your thoughts are and what your moves you would be. And let me know what your thoughts are. Hit like, subscribe, and love you. Catch you in the next one. Bye.